Now, you mentioned there about playing a baddie. You often do play baddies, don't you? And you've been cued on television so many times.
I have a long list of playing. My mother says it's because you've got rodent eyes, darling.
Hey there, it's Connor Muller and welcome to Let's Chat Showbiz. This podcast is all about Australian showbiz. We're talking the glitz, the glam, the tough times and everything in between. Let's get this show on the road. Today we are joined by a Logie Award-winning actor. You might remember him from shows such as The White Lotus, Paper Giants or even Boy Swallows Universe, just to name a few. We're thrilled to be joined by Rob Carlton.
Hey, Connor, how are you?
I'm good, Rob. How are you?
Yeah, very, very well, thank you.
That's good. Now, I was going through all your acting credits for this interview, and there's so many. You've done a lot of television work. I'll just list off a few. You've done Boy Swallows Universe, Sweet River, East Street, All Saints, Underbelly, Wanted, Home and Away, McLeod's Daughters, A Country Practice, and so much more. Just out of those few there that I listed, what comes to mind the most just then?
Oh, wow. A life in the game. I mean, I've been acting since I was 14 years old, and that was, that was a varied list of credits picked from different decades, yes. Different times of life. I think you mentioned East Street.
Yep.
I was 17 at best, I think, when I did East Street, and I got kicked out of East Street by the Reverend Bob in what I thought was a largely unchristian act. I thought he was protecting Rebecca Elmalaglu.
Oh, yeah.
A star of a screen in here in Australia. She was 15.
Wow.
Now, admittedly, he was protecting her and she needed protecting. I agree, my character wasn't pleasant to her. But obviously, if you look at it now, he just kicked me out with nary a thought for my future, right? And I was a 17-year-old kid living on the wrong side of the tracks. Of course, I wasn't a nice kid, but I thought I deserved some Christian kindness, which he didn't offer me. But that was a terrific time back then, being a young fella, being invited onto those shows or auditioning and getting the roles. Yeah. Obviously very exciting every time you get a job.
Of course, yeah.
And then, running right through all those various other credits. In fact, I think you mentioned Wanted, which we shot, of course, here in South Australia.
We have reason to believe there's someone after you both.
Oh, shit, Sherlock.
Where's the money?
The new event series is here.
I think a lot of people are going to get hurt.
New Wanted is on 7.
2018, 2019, that was. And that was just such a great show, such fun to do. Rebecca Gibney was, of course, our leader on that. She's an extraordinary actor. And then one of the great fun things about that was shooting all around South Australia in their locations. We drove up to Cairn. And then in Cairn, there was an amazing woman there that lent me a Harley Davidson so I could drive around the Flinders Ranges and go hiking on the Harley. And then she knew a fella called Kevin Wedding, who, among other things, his business interests were so varied, Connor, including oil removal, secondhand waste, tin shed building, tin reclamation. And here's the curveball, aeronautical engineering and flying, which is where my interest came in. He would pick me up before the shoot. We'd drive down to the aerodrome, jump into the aeroplane that he built and go flying over the Flinders Ranges before shooting.
Yeah, right.
I didn't tell anyone on set that that's what I'd been doing. The aircraft we were in was tiny.
Oh, God.
It was... But that was Kevin Wedding, and that was the sort of thing you get to do when you're travelling around.
That's right, yeah.
It's a strange life, and you get to do some exciting things.
Yeah. Now, you were in A Country Practice.
I was.
Do you remember much from your scenes in A Country Practice?
Man, I was in Country Practice about 4 or 5 times as different episodes. And there's bits I remember. The very first... So Country Practice was my very first drama that I did on television. I had done one ad before that, but that was my first scripted drama series. And again, it started the way it kind of ended up. I played a young boy that was a bit sketchy and a bit frightened. Now, as it turns out, I was nice, but I was a bit sketchy. But I remember very, very clearly my very first day on set on A Country Practice filmed out at Dural.
Right.
Like I said, I was 14 years old, super excited. Just a couple of scenes. And it really got me going. And then, of course, I got invited back to A Country Practice where all sorts of terrible things happened to me. One time I broke my arm. on the way to discovering a disposed of corpse in somebody's back garden. Yeah, that was a strange one. Another time I went back and I had my testicle removed because it turned out to be testicular cancer.
Right.
And so they performed an orchidectomy on me there in Wandon Valley. And they removed the testicle and sent it to Burrigan for testing. So I remember all of that. That's, of course, when I was the plumber's apprentice there. I was an aspiring young Olympic cyclist who had testicular problems. Of course, very difficult times for a young cyclist. They, of course, at the time weren't aware that it was that would be Lance Armstrong's great battle on the bike. Apart from the steroids, it was his testicle that also gave him some tricks. And that's what a country practice did. They were ahead of the curve, Connor.
I've got a clip here of you in a country practice, which I'll get you to have a look at if you like.
All right.
Miss Watson, when the megapode lays its eggs, it builds this mound of leaf and mulch. Then it keeps adding little bits and then taking little bits away to keep the eggs at exactly the right temperature to incubate them.
All that to save itself the trouble of sitting on a nest.
I reckon sitting on a nest would be a whole lot easier. I'm going to go over and see them one day, Miss Watson.
I don't think you'll ever leave the valley, Budgie Markham. I've asked Cook to save some stale bread for you to give to your bird friends.
Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Watson. Bread's no good for them.
Not even wholemeal?
Upsets their little tummies, gives them constipation. You never, ever give bread to a bird, Miss Watson.
Yeah, I'll remember that.
Miss Watson, when the megapode lays...
So there you go.
That's cute.
So you remember that clearly, or?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do. That's right. So young Kim Wilson was on that episode with me as well. And if I'm not mistaken, there was another fella called Andrew who played the lead guestie in that one.
Right.
Beautiful, sort of tight curly hair, and he was a pianist prodigy. I think that was the storyline on that episode, was it?
Yeah. So there you go.
Oh, mate, thanks for dredging that up. A little hurtful that you found a clip with me with so much hair, of course, Connor.
I had to look and I was trying to go through and find it, and I'm like, where is it? Oh, there he is.
Yeah, look at all that hair.
It's the voice.
Yeah.
Now, in 2012, you won a silver Logie for your role as Kerry Packer in Paper Giants.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's
right. What was that like, playing Kerry?
Look, playing Kerry Packer was, look, as I say, it was a great privilege to play an Australian business icon. It remains an enduring sadness that I had to wait for Australia's ugliest businessman to be cast before I got a lead role in a drama. It was a real step up, but this is a real lesson. What I learned in the lead up to that about myself was really, really interesting. I nearly didn't get the part. I nearly actually threw the part away. And it would have been me doing that. They rang me up and said, Rob, they're looking at a small bunch of people that might be able to play the role of Kerry Packer. No one had ever played Packer before. And of course, he was an extraordinarily large icon on the Australian landscape. And so at first I was flattered. They go, only a handful of you are ugly enough to, step up to the plate on this one. We don't have a huge amount of money for CGI, so it's going to have to be largely done in the face. But at the time, this was coming off the back, because I transitioned from being an actor to a producer, writer with my show Chandon Pictures.
Yes.
So I was a showrunner on Chandon Pictures. That was my company, my business. I was in charge, and I'd done business all around the world on that. We'd sold it all over the place. We'd been nominated for things. I'd won awards. Then the thing with Kerry Packer came up, and I was like, at first excited. I said, yeah, no worries, send me the script. And I was like, oh, the script isn't that good. And they said, oh, they want you to do this. I said, look, I'm busy. I've got to go to LA. I've got business to do. I'll meet with the director. I see what her vibe is. Met with her. I liked her, but there were some issues with the script. I didn't have time. I said, I don't have time. I've got to go to LA to do this work. And so then I got to LA, and they said, Rob, they really need to see an audition. Right. And I'm like, well, mate, if they're that, they literally got in touch a week and a bit ago. I've only just read the script. I've got my business. If they're this disorganised and they're that, maybe I don't want to be part of it.
Yeah.
And now part of me was thinking, what would Packer do? But part of me, and I thought I was being strategic. I also thought, no, I'm protecting the work. I'm protecting the integrity. I don't have time. I've got to do it properly. To do an audition like that is a big lift, because it's a proper person. You've got to create, and it can't be a caricature.
Yeah.
So for any young actors out there that are looking at these things, a very big difference between playing a character and a caricature. of that person, very different intentions. So in any case, fast forward, I said to my email, I said to my agent, I was getting a bit bullshit this time. I said, look, I don't think it's real. I think they're panicking. I'll have a look at it when I get back. If there's time when I get back, I'll have a look at it. I got an email from the producer saying, Rob, the pressure's real. We really do just need to know whether you're in or out, but we can't move forward unless we see a tape. So just make a decision whether you're interested in the job. And I was in that hotel room in Los Angeles, and I suddenly discovered I was terrified of getting the role. Terrified at the age of 40 odd that I would play a role that people would actually have somebody compare me to, as in the real guy, and discover I couldn't act. What was interesting about this was that my behaviour in the weeks leading up to it, I thought I was being strategic. I thought I was being brave and bold and being, it was fear. Fear was masquerading as courage and bravery, and fear was making me say and do things to push people away, to stop myself testing myself against that format. So it was a really, really great lesson. Now, happily, my friend Adam Spencer and I went to university together many years ago, and we made a commitment to each other. Try and say yes to something that frightens the shit out of you at least once a year. And I was sitting in that hotel room, and I realised for the first time in a long time I was terrified. And I knew at that point, well, I've now got to work as hard as I possibly can to get that job. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened thereafter. And then I got the job, and then I was terrified. The whole 3 months we were shooting it, I felt sick in my stomach. I didn't know if it was going to be any good, but I just worked and I worked and I worked, and I did all of the research. And so, yeah, that's a really, something to consider for younger people coming through.
Yeah.
Is that sometimes your emotional response, while it's important to recognize it, it might not be giving you the right messages. Yeah. And my emotional response was fear, and the message it was giving me was shut it down.
Push it away, yeah.
So you've kind of got to breathe through that at first emotion. I hear a lot of people say, well, this is how I'm feeling. It's really important. And I agree. Your feelings are very important. But sometimes they can send you the wrong messages and ask you to do the wrong things and stop you from challenging yourself. Yeah. So it's a difficult thing to navigate.
Yeah, very.
Yeah. Oh, just on that too, just one last thing. In actual fact, what made that stranger was that it was my previous victories, if you will, that got me in that position. So you see, by this time I'd turned myself into a showrunner, a producer, I'd won a Writers Guild Award, we'd won Trop Fest. In my mind, I was becoming a bit of a thing. It was that I think my psyche was protecting.
Yeah.
My fear was saying, if you go and put yourself on the bench again with Kerry Packer, then you might lose all of this good stuff.
Hard work, yeah.
So it was an interesting time.
Yeah. And when you did a lot of research for that role.
Yeah.
How'd you go about that?
I did everything. So I've got another friend of mine, Dean Murphy, that directs and produces films, and he's got a great saying, which is have every conversation.
Yeah.
Have every conversation, which is why I'm here today, Connor.
Yes.
You reached out, and I thought, here's a young fella that's got a few things going on. I'll take every conversation.
Yeah.
And so with regards to Kerry Packer, you take every conversation and you put out 1,000 feelers. Who knew him? Who did this? Who did that? He knew him a bit. Oh, gosh, that's a bit. Gosh, that's going to take a little while. Have the conversation. The best stuff I got, there used to be a very famous, or there still is on the internet, a very famous tiny little clip where Kerry Packer is berating the Senate, it's the inquiry into the print media in Australia, and he's got a lot of politicians in front of him. It's a very famous clip where he's berating them for, why would I give you any more tax dollars? You're not spending it well enough as a government for me to give you a penny more. Anybody that's not minimising their tax is a fool. It's that sort of thing, right? Yeah. Very famous speech. Now, I went and had a look at that, and then I had a look at the person that posted it and realised by some freak and fluke of nature, I knew the person that had posted that clip.
Yeah, right.
So I then got back in touch with them and I said, have you got the original full-length clip? He said, yes, I do. And it went for hours and hours and hours. So I had that video sent to me. I then had hours of Kerry Packer on the stand, right? And unedited. This was the bit. Right, so every conversation, every avenue. So The easy bit would have just to have seen the 2 minutes on the internet. You get the source raw material, and now you can do a deep dive. At the very beginning of that, after it was a bit of a hullabaloo, and there was a lot of press, and Kerry was getting annoyed, and he said, come on, let's get started. What is this circus, right? And they said, all right, we'll get started. Everything finally settled down. And they said, could you please state your name and the capacity with which you attend today? And he sat there, and he looked around, and he looked at everybody, and then he looked at them, and he just said, my name is Kerry Francis Bullmore Packer, and I appear reluctantly. And that was the bit, mate. That bit said to me what Kerry's life was like. He knew who he was, and he didn't really want to be here.
Yeah.
And before I heard action in every scene, I would sit quietly in my fat suit, and I would sit there, and I knew action would be coming up, and I would say to myself, my name is Kerry Francis Bullmore Packer, and I appear reluctantly. I'd hear action, and we're on, mate.
Yeah, right. Wow.
So that was some of the research.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And had you worked with Asher before, prior to that, Asher Keddy?
No, I'd not worked with Asher before. I knew Asher socially.
Yep.
But I hadn't worked with Asher, and that was an extraordinary business working with her. I mean, her performance as Ita Buttrose in that show, Paper Giants, was really a considerable piece. It was a very, very difficult role, and she had the weight of the whole production on her shoulders. She was the leading lady, and she was in most every scene, and I thought she was a triumph. Yeah,
wow. When you were nominated for the Logie, were you shocked at all, or were you did you expect it?
Oh, an interesting question. Does one expect nominations? One always hopes for nominations, Connor.
Yeah, of course.
And other than that, you just tend to, I tend to just try and take everything with the joy and celebration that comes along.
TV Week Silver Logie goes to Rob Carlton.
Rob's first ever TV Week Logie Award for his portrayal as the young Kerry Packer comes from his first ever nomination.
I've seen behind the scenes of so many awards nights, as I host events, I host awards for all sorts of industries, not just acting. And of course, the actor awards, the Logie Awards, the IF Awards, all these different sorts of awards in my industry. I've been behind the scenes of those as well. You're presenting awards and things like that. So these things are always invariably run by groups of people. There's always subjectivity involved. People get furious when they don't get nominated. They get furious when they don't win. There's always an argument each which way.
Yeah.
And so my take on all of that, literally, Connor, is to just, if it comes your way, you smile, you're polite, you turn up on time. I won that Logie. It was a stunningly fun night. It was super joyous, and I hold it dear. But, and then the truth of it is, spotlight's not on you for long.
Yeah.
And when it is, you run around, you get to as many meetings as you can, you turn up on time, you try and take advantage of it. But you're going to have to keep working just as hard over the course of the next few years.
Yeah, right. No, I've recently just seen a few episodes of yourself in White Lotus.
Okay.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, look, White Lotus was a crazy one. It was super fun. Of course, it was like the biggest show in the planet.
Yeah.
Over the course of the last couple of years. I've just got a small cameo.
Yeah.
But a small cameo does include 3 weeks of filming in Phuket.
Oh, great.
It does include a week's filming on one of the biggest sort of super yachts floating around the PP Islands, which is a sort of James Bond island. It does include 3 weeks of staying in a 6-star resort over in Phuket with my own pool that you can jump into from either my bedroom or my bathroom. It does include time with some of my heroes, Parker Posey, Jason Isaacs, incredible actors both. And it included spending time with some absolutely brilliant, bright young things that are coming up through the ranks. Sarah Catherine Hook, an amazing young actress. Patrick Schwarzenegger, I found to be a delightful young man. I really appreciated Patrick's work ethic. I thought his positioning on set was glorious. I thought him to be funny and polite. And I thought his work was really good. Now, the young fella called Sam Navolo was on that. Amy Liu from Sex Education. She's such a brilliant and bright spark. Walton Goggins was on there, and fantastically elusive, interesting man, wonderful artist. And of course, at the epicenter of it all, Mike White, the storyteller on the planet at the moment. An extraordinary man with an extraordinary gift. And it's a really interesting getting a sense of him and then seeing how that plays out through story. I mean, now I look at White Lotus and it's such a glorious exploration of kind of anxiety comedy and status comedy. I think anxiety and status, I think the reason White Lotus hits so hard is because it plays in that anxiety space, that status anxiety space. And I think it's an epidemic around the world. I think it dominates most people's daily lives, that sense of how they're being seen by others. Yeah. And it makes people nervous. And Mike White seems to have a direct line into that, and he pulls it off with this joy and charm and concern and wonder, and he's a naughty little imp.
Another show that you did more recently was Boy Swallows Universe, which has got a massive following as well. Won so many awards. What was that like? Boy
Swallows Universe was just an absolutely terrific Australian production to be part of. I mean, truly international in its impact. And Trent Dalton, I'd already been in touch with. Now, this is one of those fun bits. This is one of those little things where if you've got a slight profile like I do, and interesting things can come your way. And they come my way because I like to put things out there a little. When I first read Trent Dalton's Boy Swallows Universe, so my background, I mean, I've been an actor all my life, but I've got a degree in literature. Oh, okay. So I did my arts degree, majoring in English Australian literature. I'm a passionate reader, and I read widely. When Boy Swallows Universe came out, like millions of others around the world, I was blown away. I think through Instagram or Twitter or whatever it was, I sent a DM to Trent just saying, this was incredible. This was shortly off the back of playing Kerry Packer, so I had a bit of a profile at the time. I got an immediate message back from Trent saying, oh my goodness me, I really like your work. It's so lovely to get a thing. So we did a little bit of fanboying back and forth back then. That was then. Then, when I got cast in the role, like all other actors, I put an audition down and got the role. Very shortly after I got the role, I got a message from Trent Dalton saying, mate, I can't believe you're playing this role. It's one of my favourite characters. That character, that editor of the Courier Mail was like a mentor to me. He's like, that character is an amalgam of all of these hard bastards that I used to love. And I think you're perfect for it. And then the fun bit. There's a scene in Boy Swallows Universe right towards the end of the season where I come out and I'm furious. I don't know where Eli Bell is. I don't know where Caitlin Spies is. They're off somewhere. We've got deadlines to hit. I've got to stand. I'm going to rouse the newsroom to get them to some sort of conformity so that we can deliver the weekend paper, put it to bed by time. So the night before we're going to shoot this, I'm getting left back to where I'm staying, and I'm like, man, I need a little bit more something. I need a little bit more something. There's something going on in this scene. So, of course, I got Trent Dalton's direct number. I ring Trent and I say, mate, we've got this scene. We've got a big scene. Tell me, mate, you've worked in these newsrooms. What's it like? What's it like? And then I got Trent Dalton down the phone saying, Robbie, mate, Friday afternoons, you're trying to get that newspaper put to bed for Saturday. It is big. There's people flying around. You make no mistake. The speech from that editor, the speech from the editor at that time, at that day, the stakes could not be higher. I want you to think of Gandalf at the foot of Mordor, bringing the power of the dark world and all of the worlds of the Middle Earth to come together to make sure that he can crush Sauron. That's the spirit we're going for. And so as a result of that speech from Trent, if you go back to Boy Swallows Universe, you'll see me come out of that great big office, look around, I'd set it all up, I'd organised it all, I had a chair onto a table so I could stand up, do the thing and go, and so it was just great fun because that way you've got the thread of Trent Dalton, those observations that he was making as a 20-year-old kid when he was a journalist fighting his way out of the gutter, and the characters that he saw and that he admired. And then 30 years later, he's written a novel. We're now repopulating it. It's now my job to come in and play one of those Trent Dalton mentors. And then he and I can have a direct chat about what that meant to him as a 20-year-old. And then I can put that on screen forever and send around the world.
Yeah.
Mate, to be part of a team like that is a joy.
I bet. Yeah. Now, you mentioned there about playing a baddie. You often do play baddies, don't you? And you've been killed on television so many times.
I have a long list of playing. My mother says it's because you've got rodent eyes, darling. Man, now I love my mother very much and she loves me, right?
Yeah.
We'll get back to that playing baddies in a second.
Yeah.
She says, you've got rodent eyes. Here's something else she said to me the other day. It was Christmas time. She was staying at my place. I've woken up one morning. It's early in the morning. Come downstairs and my mother looks at me and she says, good morning. I say, hello. She says, tell me, what are those dogs called? Those dogs that have too much skin on their faces. The dogs with too much skin on their faces, what are they called? And I said, a bloodhound. She said, yes, a bloodhound. You look like a bloodhound.
Thanks, Mum.
So, but I tell you what, I never grew up believing I was something I wasn't. But I also grew up knowing that I had the love of a great man.
Yeah, yeah.
So, swings and roundabouts, Connor, swings and roundabouts. But yeah, no, I do have a long history of playing very sketchy characters on Australian television and film.
What's been the most brutal character you've played, do you think?
The most brutal character I've played, as in things that have been perpetrated, as things the character's done to other people, or things that have been done to him, because there's a couple of baskets, mate. There's a couple of baskets. And I got a new movie coming out pretty soon where the stuff that's done to me is really pretty full on. We'll leave that in the basket. I'm not sure how much I can reveal on that one. The one that did the nastiest things, I'd probably have to say Kiwi Dave. Right now, Kiwi Dave did kill people, and I think he was a robber, and he did all of those sorts of things. I accosted Jay Lagaia's character in Water Rats. That's almost a sexual assault, because I did get all his clothes off, and I held up the handcuffs and said, "It's bedtime." And so there was a lot of that. There's a lot of threatening stuff, but the thing that I'm getting towards is that in that show, Kiwi Dave was stalking Colin Friel's character. And I did all sorts of things. We fought each other. I tried to kill him. I tried to do all of this sort of stuff. But the most horrific and obscene part of that storyline was that I snuck into his house and I went into his bathroom and I stuck his toothbrush up my bum. And I took a photo of it, and then I put his toothbrush back, and then left it for a week, and then sent him the photo. So I reckon, now that I remember that detail, pretty brutal.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
When Kiwi Dave got shot dead by another great Australian actor called Jonathan Mills, great mate of mine, when he got shot, he got stood over and said he needed shooting. No one ever mourned the death of one of my characters, Connor.
Yeah, right. See you later. Done. You mentioned before Chandon Pictures, which one are you?
Chandon Pictures. Pictures, that's the show I'm proudest of.
Yes. Which it's still on Stan.
It's on Stan, man. Well, I'm the producer of that, man. I'm doing the deals on that. Right?
Of course.
I'm constantly pushing that one around. So the last deal I did was with Stan, and we got a three-year agreement to have it hosted on Stan, which I'm thrilled with.
Yeah, of course.
There's a few of my shows on there. I'm in a few shows on Stan and Netflix at the moment, which is good. You know, got to keep all of that, sort of product moving around. Chandon Pictures. That was a big one for me. I just won Tropfest in 2006 with my short film Carmichael and Shane, about a single father of twins that chooses a favourite child, and then parlayed that into getting a full deal. I made 8.5 hours in season 1, 8.5 hours in season 2. As I said, we won the Writers Guild Award for Best Comedy. We were nominated for Logies, for Actor Awards, or that they were AFI Awards then, Directors Guild Awards. And we sold it to 20 territories all around the world. We sold it to the US, we sold it to England, we sold it to, I think we were a boon in the Scandi countries. And it was just a really exciting time. I wrote that whole series. I had a couple of close collaborators. My co-director Alex Weinrich was amazing. Russell Smythe was my other developer. And of course the amazing cast of Darren Gilshanen, Rebecca Massey and Josh Lawson. And then if you have a look through that series, and if you're listeners and watchers of this podcast, if you want to get a list of great Australian actors, I would say you can't do much better than have a look at the people that I got on my show.
I watched a few episodes, and even then you just saw people popping up, all different people. I think I saw Ed Cavalier at the start, or towards,
Ed Cavalier in episode 1, season 1.
Yeah.
And his performance I thought was stunning. He's an absolute beauty in that. Of course, Ed and I go back to university. I taught Ed theatre sports.
Yeah, wow, okay.
Of course, didn't need to teach you much. The guy's a genius. And then what I love about Ed is that, so I was running and hosting theatre sports at Sydney University. And this is a great thing about, for any young people listening and watching, man, you just get out and about, find the glowworms, find the people that are doing things and just get involved. Say yes. You won't know where it's going to head. You won't know how it's going to play out. But action begets action. And Ed Cavalier was one of those guys. He's a lot younger than I am, but he came up to me and he said, Rob, I heard you're not doing theatre sports anymore next year. You're giving it away. I said, yeah. He said, I'd really like to know how to apply for your job.
Yeah, wow.
And I'd seen this fella around. So I taught him some theatre sports, and I got a sense of the cut of his jib. Right? Okay, all right. I said, look, mate, I'll tell you a secret. He said, what's that? I said, you don't apply for my job. He says, well, I want to apply for it. I said, no, that's not how it's not going to work, mate. I'm not going to be here next year. What you want to do is start organising all the things that I did, right? So you just put up a sign saying theatre sports is starting on these dates. You put up a sign saying auditions for all the theatre sports is going to be. You put up a sign saying classes are going to start here. You put up a sign saying theatre sports season is going to start in the Manning Bar there. Once you've done all of that, you wander over to the union staff building, and you say, I've organised the theatre sports season, so where shall I, like, how do you sign me up so that I can get paid for it all? And he's gone, really? I said, mate, fill the vacuum, get it done. Who's going to stop? If it's all done, man, that's a headache gone. You're going to be the hero. And he's gone, I said, yeah, absolutely. So he did that to the letter, right? Absolutely. Went in and organised it, said, like, where do I fill out my employment forms? And they've gone, oh, right, you're the guy. Now, of course, he was genius at it, and he hosted it for years, and he was well-loved, and it was just joyous. But this is the beautiful thing about Ed Cavalier. He then took that advice, and when Tony Martin, the great Tony Martin, was wanting to get him down for a new radio show called Get This, right, which turned out to be a legendary radio station that radio show that people loved. Of course, he's rung up Ed and he said to Ed, I think I've heard you a bit about, can you panel? And I'm looking for a panellist on the show. And Ed, of course, has gone, absolutely I can. Absolutely I can. So they flew him down to Melbourne, they did the thing, and of course, Ed didn't know the difference between a red button and a green button and a blue button. He was a disaster. But by God, he was good next to Tony. So they found someone that could panel, and Ed continued on his way, and now he's the powerhouse that he is today.
Exactly. Yeah, huge. Have you ever turned down a role?
Yeah.
Yeah?
It's generally a subtle mix of the people involved and the story they're trying to tell.
Yeah.
And so I've said yes to a lot of things, and my general inclination is to, if I find somebody is honest and hardworking and their intention is good and I've got the time, I will try and turn up.
Yeah.
If I get a creepy vibe off someone, if I think they're not kind to people or to crew, it's a no every time.
Yeah.
That's really important to me. And story. If the story's not there, I'm saying no all the time.
Yeah, right. Now, you're currently in Adelaide for Adelaide Fringe Festival.
Yeah.
Tell me about your show. I saw it last night. It was fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, my show, Willing Participant. It's 4 true stories. And you saw it. It's not stand-up comedy, right?
No.
How would you describe it?
It was meaningful. I expected to walk in there to see a comedy show, which it was still funny, but it wasn't a comedy show. It was a lot more than that. It was a lot more in depth, and you spoke about grief a lot, which that was very real, and I thought it was quite interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, look, it's been really interesting. It's been going well for me. I just won Best Show at Perth Fringe Festival. Which was terrific phone call to get. And you say, people say, awards don't matter. Well, they help, mate. Especially when you're out there trying to fly and trying to get people's attention. There's 2,500 shows here at Adelaide Fringe, and you're competing against all of them.
Yeah.
We're talking about the best practitioners in the world coming to this beautiful city for 4 weeks of the year. And that's a conversation you want to be part of.
Yeah.
And so little awards like that help because it, and sort of reviews and stars. My show, though, the main thing is I've been producing. This is an interesting time of my life, Connor. So I've been a TV producer and writer and actor all my life. This is the first solo show I've ever done.
Right.
I'm now currently looking at Edinburgh Festival. I've been had an offer of a little theatre space out there, so I'm looking at the numbers, seeing if it'll work.
Yep.
But again, that's another opportunity to get out into the world and meet the bright young things. Who are the glowworms? Who are the people that are just going to light this world up and make it a richer, more joyous place? I want to be part of those conversations. Yeah. I'm 53 now. Now, the reason I can do this is my sons, who are 20, about to turn 21, they've left home. And so now it's a chance for me to get around and share these stories. My show, Willing Participant, I love doing because I think it is a little more meaningful than just a stack of jokes.
This is a shock. I was imagining receiving a genie lamp. But what they've given me is no grander than an ice cream bucket full of my dad's ashes.
The stories I tell come from different times of my life, early 20s, mid-20s, early 40s, mid-40s. And so there's a whole range of different challenges. And you've seen the show. It's not like a Showbiz show. I'm not name dropping. It's not stories about me. It's stories of challenges that I've faced real kind of things that everyone can connect to.
That's right.
And this is what I love, man. I can take an audience and there can be 15-year-olds right through to 85-year-olds.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee everyone in every age range is going to have a great night in my theatre. Yeah. And then the other thing I can guarantee is that people are going to want to leave sharing their own stories, telling their friends about stuff. And that's really where my life is at the moment. My wife and I have built up a business called Brave Words. She's a writing coach, and she teaches people how to write memoir, true story, and she's a powerhouse. And her capacity to find people with beautiful stories and draw them out. So we run a show once a month up in Gosford called Brave Words Live. That's all storytelling. I'm writing a true story for that every month. I'm generating a new I've got my stage show, Willing Participant. I've already written my next show so I can tour the world with that next year as well. Yeah. Out of these stories, I'm looking at taking some of these stories, turning them into TV shows, turning them into movies. So this is now starting into a story generator, which I can practice my craft of live storytelling, the beautiful theatre and the moves that you can pull on stage that I really enjoy. The challenge of remembering 8,000 words in exact order matched to an emotion and a move becomes like a yoga Zen type practice, as well as generating a huge amount of story content that I can start putting into other formats, drawing together bigger teams, crews, cast, distributors, executives, networks around the world, so I can start building a bigger pattern. But at the moment, we're still in that first formative period, trying to gather a coalition of the willing, of people that love these stories, so that I can do what I really want to do, which is share these feelings that make people feel less alone.
Yeah, wow. And it's still got a few more shows in the Garden of Unearthly
Yeah, that's
Delights.
right. I close in the Garden on the 16th of March.
Yep.
So I've got 4 more shows. I've got tonight off. then 4 more shows, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing if we can fill it. We're down at the Garden of Unearthly Delights in the Spiegelzelt, beautiful little tent down there. It's just gorgeous. And if people are worried about the heat, it is air conditioned.
Yes, it was nice and cool in there.
Yeah.
And after Adelaide, is it going anywhere else?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I've got this crazy little kooky little 3-city East Coast tour. Gosford.
Yep.
Coffs Harbour. Brunswick Picture House. Then I've got 3 nights at the Newcastle Fringe, and then I've got 3 weeks at the Melbourne Comedy Festival.
Oh,
and that's a big one. Yeah, in the Malthouse Theatre.
Oh, yeah.
In the Beckett Theatre, sorry, at the Malthouse Hub.
Yep.
I'm very excited about that.
Fantastic.
That's April 1st to the 20th at 6:30 p.m. Great slot.
Yes, very good slot. Yeah. Very good slot. Now, at the end of each episode, I ask a guest a question to ask the next guest.
Oh.
And our last guest was Adelaide performer Dee Dee James.
Yeah.
And she asked, are you happy with what you've done in your career? And if not, why?
Entirely happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, entirely happy. Because there's more to come.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Exciting.
Yeah. There's always more to come. And I feel that where I'm at now, I've worked really hard. I'm pleased with a lot of the work that I've done. I'm pleased with where I'm at in my career. I'm pleased with the fact that I'm still sharpening my blades every night on stage with a solo show. And I'm still working hard, you know. I mean, the world is different, you know. I'm now doing daily accent practice training, constantly trying to get better at that, making sure I've got opportunities. And again, the only reason really I'm doing my accent is to take advantage of opportunities from around the world. And so, yeah, if it all had to stop tomorrow, I'd be disappointed.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty excited about what might come.
Yeah. And now, a question to ask the next guest.
Yes.
Now, we don't know who the next guest could be. It could be anyone. But a question to ask the next guest. It can be about absolutely anything.
Can you remember the time in your life where you were most uncertain about the future?
I like that.
And can you remember the thing or the person that helped you move through it?
Yeah, awesome. Great question. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Rob. It's been a pleasure.
Connor, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.